Sanford Thompson, and I graduated from NEC in 2010 from the Sistema Fellows Program. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I came to NEC after completing a Bachelor's of Music in Trumpet Performance at the Curtis Institute of Music. In early June, President Kalin appointed me as her special advisor to help NEC respond to the cultural equity challenges facing the institution and the NEC community. Tonight marks our fourth of 5 public forums that focuses on the Black experience at NEC. These conversations provide the NEC community the opportunity to explore how we all can help NEC live up to its commitment of cultural equity and belonging. By listening to the experiences and perspectives of our students, alumni, faculty, and staff, we will explore ideas that will have a positive impact on our community that builds a more hopeful future for our current and prospective students. This series culminates on September 30th with Black alumni that will share their experiences and ideas for the future. For those joining us on our live stream that want to ask questions, please take a moment now to navigate to the necmusic.edu website, click on Cultural Equity and Belonging under the About tab, and find tonight's event in order to join us on Zoom, where questions can be submitted. For anyone else who would like to share their ideas and experiences with NEC, feel free to email us at belonging@necmusic.edu. After facing the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and President John F. Kennedy, NEC responded musically throughout Black communities in Boston and began developing its jazz and community services departments. The expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia and the Kent State massacre in the spring of 1970 ignited a period of unrest at NEC that disrupted the school and encouraged students to rethink their musical and life purposes. While the events and circumstances of 50 years ago shouldn't be compared to today, some of the questions our current students are asking are similar. I'm humbled to be joined by Ms. Cheryl Susheel Bibbs to share her reflections of NEC during the challenging time of the 1970s, discuss what our community of musicians can accomplish in our uncertain times today, and ideate changes at NEC that could give voice to the contributions of African Americans in classical music and better support all of our students. Ms. Bibbs received her Bachelor's of Music degree from Boston University School for the Arts in opera and a master's from NEC in vocal performance. She has served the arts and the humanities professionally for over 30 years. As an acclaimed classical singer and National Emmy winner as the youngest executive producer in the PBS system for a major international series, Ms. Bibbs has, since 2007, secured 15 International Independent Film Awards, including 3 for excellence in directing, and 2 International Telly Awards. She has 2 award-winning documentaries on PBS nationally and 2 touring nationwide. Susheel Bibbs is the recipient of the 2017 Willis Patterson Award in Research for Black Music, and she has won commendations from the St. Louis City Museum and the Los Angeles County African American Museum for her contributions to women's history. The supervisors of the city and county of San Francisco have awarded her the highest commendation for her body of work in the arts and humanities. And most recently, she won a Lifetime Achievement Award from Who's Who Among Women and was celebrated in a profile on PBS KVIE Arts Showcase. In 2012, she founded the Living Heritage Foundation to assist the careers of other professional artists. Ms. Bibbs, thank you so much for taking the time this evening to talk with all of us about such an important time in NEC's history and your ideas on how NEC can move forward from where we are today. Do you mind just starting off just telling us a little bit more about your musical upbringing and path to NEC?
Well, I don't mind at all, and I just want to say thank you for inviting me. And I hope that some of the things that I have to share will be helpful in integrating Black classical song and Black classical music into the curriculum, and in helping minority students feel more comfortable. I think to get into some things that set me up to be able to do this is what you might want to know. I think I started my musical training at Sumner High School. That's the first black high school west of the Mississippi. And the important thing about it was that at that time, way back when, I was not there at the inception, but at any rate, way back when, the African Americans had begun to get doctorates, but they couldn't find jobs. And so many black doctoral persons came to that high school. So we had an amazing faculty in music and in all other areas, but especially in music. And I'll just tell you what I mean. Our high school gave rise to Grace Bumbry, Robert McFerrin, Felicia Weathers, and composer Ollie Wilson, conductor Dingwall Filleri, who conducted the Oscars. On the popular side, Tina Turner, Dick Gregory, and we used to sing with the St. Louis Symphony. Our musical at the end of my graduation was Aida. So you get the idea. It was popular to be involved with that kind of music, and I grew up with a touring choir and a professional choir that toured with spirituals, and I was very proud of all of this music and all of that we had done. Now, since then, it's not so popular to be so involved in classical music. In high school, there was the gospel rage, and then there's the hip hop, and so we didn't have the peer support, I think, in the years after that. But I did, and that's what's important, because that's what made me feel so proud when I went into college, at first at Boston University School for the Arts in Opera. And I didn't suddenly see this music anywhere. Then I got the Conservatory, same thing. Where is this music? Where's this beautiful music that I grew up singing? And so it is a natural thing for me to want to share the idea of some beautiful music that is underserved in our smorgasbord of professional music, classical music. Now, I speak of classical music because that's where I'm from, but the jazz department was there. I knew Rand Blake, I knew Carl. I was aware of a jazz department, but I don't have many things to share in that regard, except that some of those things that I have to talk about could interest students in the jazz department. My feeling is that if you want to think of a thesis, before I tell you a couple of other things about the area in which you asked, my thesis is that if you expose people to this music, if people get a chance to hear it and perform it, they will love it. We're talking of great music, and we are talking of a great conservatory that presents great music. So it's a matter of exposure and performance and understanding, not a matter of just adopting something because it's, the thing to do. And that's what I hope to show you a little bit today. Anyway, to finish this business of what brought me to NEC and what brought me here, I can say that I was grateful to Boston University for all the leading roles that I got there in opera, for getting me into the Salzburg Mozarteum in Austria. And I was chosen there to sing for the Salzburg Festival, which is on my resume today, So as a young person, I was privileged. But when I got to New England Conservatory, I got a scholarship, I got a teaching fellowship in the opera department. I was able to teach in two areas of the extension, both at the university, at the Conservatory, and in Hingham. I sang in the opera department, and I did at least 5 leading roles there. And one time, of course, Gunther Schuller was the conductor. So I also got the support of singing out at large out in the area with 4 opera companies, and it was NEC that opened up many of those things. They opened up my debut at the Santa Fe Opera, where I was able to teach other interns and actually do a debut. So I'm grateful. That's all I have to say about that. And I would like to share something that would help people be more comfortable there. We weren't so many people of minority descent when I was there. And those who were there worked very hard, but we were aware of things that were going on. And I need to mention that now because that also affects what I did for the rest of my career. So I was a typical busy performing student in difficult times, and that's what's important. We all knew of all the deaths that were occurring, of all the protests that were occurring, of the marches that had occurred, of all the people, prominent people from JFK to Martin Luther King who were assassinated. It was a very violent time. And we were all aware, especially because some people had to go there, we were aware of the Vietnam War. I just lost a family member this week whose life was completely upended by the war. When he came back, he was never the same. So these things are with you. They don't leave you. And so students tried to do different things. In the community services department in which I participated, many students went out into the community to try to teach and to try to make a connection between the conservatory and the community. Many students volunteered to teach individually. I worked in the community services department as a liaison with Gunther Schuller and the department, and that was a department that facilitated those kinds of connections. My thing was you need to know the experience of African Americans. All of our students need to know that in order to begin to understand African American students and as people. And when you see people as people, that's when things begin to improve. So I worked on what was called the Black Experience Library. And I brought in books about the Black experience, and we repackaged them and got them into the library. I can say that was something that I worked very hard on, and I was very sad when the community services department ended. And at the end, when I got my master's, of course, the conservatory ended for a while. There was the national strike after students were shot and killed at Kent State University. And there were protests that started across the land, and it ended in a national strike. So we didn't have a graduation per se. We received our diplomas in the mail. The university was shut down. And I think that's important to know. All that violence, all that upheaval, all those many deaths that you are now seeing, we had many of them happening then. So there are similarities between that time, except that I think that time, so right now, was more violent, of course. And so what do? Well, you bring that with you. And I moved on, sure, into my career as a classical full-time soprano. But when I did that, I began to tour with unique concerts. Hispanic music, they may call it Latinx music, I don't know what they call it now, classical music with orchestras and in concerts with lute and with storytellers. And I tried to bring together the Black experience in classical music. And I started, touring with those things in my general recitals and later in the 80s in special recitals, all full recitals called An Unsung Muse, Classical Song of Black Composers. And those were in major concert series and with orchestras all across the country. We had the Unsung Muse. We had more of the Unsung Muse. We had the Unsung Muse again. Literally, people kept booking the concerts, and I think that's my point. My point is that it's beautiful, beautiful music. The point is that sometimes in those concerts, and my accompanists were of all races, but sometimes in those concerts, the audience would stand 3 times in the middle of the concert. Mm. And the reason isn't, oh yeah, I'm tooting my horn. No, I was adequate, obviously, but it's the music. It was beautiful, stunning music with a new experience that it was bringing forward, with colors in the music that were unique. And so it's very important to debunk, I think, some stereotypes about what we're talking about. Before I do that, I'm just going to add one more experience that I think will help you understand where I'm coming from with my suggestions today. At a given point, I sang an opera through NEC with WGBH, the PBS station, the largest PBS station in the country. It's in Boston. And I met a lot of people. And eventually, when I came back from Europe, I was very ill. So I wanted to scale down my performing career. And I was lucky enough to be hired at WGBH. I won't go into any detail, but what happened was I began in radio, I began in TV, but in radio. I was hired to revamp the curriculum in that classical radio station so that it was inclusive to minorities. So this was very successful. And I did so not by imposing things, but by working with the, putting new things into the music library, right? Same kind of stuff. I was friends with all those people because I was a producer. So I had a classical series called Performance, and I started to bring in Black classical performers. And I worked with Robert J. Lertzema, who's passed on, but many people know his name. It's legend. And, what we did, Ron De La Chiesa, who still works in Boston in radio, and they had these long blocks of programming, and I just introduced ideas, and they took it forward so that it was theirs. And that's important, that you don't impose things on people. You expose them to an idea. The radio station made a mandate, that's true, but you just know that if it's the right thing and if they're involved, things are going to happen. So those blocks of music opened up to, in Ronnie's case, third string music. He loved it. And finally, we added some series, Essays in Black Music with A.B. Spellman, who is still famous. We added Music Through the Night with Eric Jackson. We added some special blocks of programming, but we didn't impose anything on people. The audiences, because it was interwoven, and this is very important, because it was interwoven in the program that they already loved. I had the Spider's Web music storybook, and I interwove folk storytelling of all kinds, Indian, Asian, African, so that those who already loved the pieces and loved the station and loved the music didn't feel put upon, but were enriched by new things. That is why the people stood at my concerts. So I'm hoping that some of the things I have to offer today for the Conservatory, similarly, will be useful. That's all. And if not, okay. But I want you to know that they're not hard. The things I have to offer are on the model of experience the music, and you'll see that you love it. And that means a lot. So it's how do you experience the music that I'll first talk about. And the first thing is to debunk a myth. It's very important. We got to banish the otherness of the music. of Black composers. I use Black because I'm talking about Le Chevalier de Saint-Georges of France. I'm talking about José Núñez Garcia of Brazil. I'm talking about people from all over the world who wrote classical music. And so I use the term Black. It was popular in my day too, but I'm using it for that reason. So we want to banish the otherness of Black composers. These are classically trained school composers. It started way back in the 1840s when Oberlin would train African Americans. So we're talking about well-trained African American composers who wrote beautiful music. That's number one. Secondly, you're talking about bringing personal and ethnic experience into music. And people think, oh yeah, they're going to bring jazz into the music. Well, let's talk about this. Noel da Costa of Rutgers did bring bebop into his music. I went and worked with him. William Grant Still was a composer both on Broadway and in film. So he did bring, along with his work with Nadia Boulanger, Debussy, and he worked with the music of Debussy. He also brought the sort of flavor of Hollywood movie music into his music. Florence Price brought spirituals into her symphonies. This is true. Anthony Davis brought a little jazz. He won the Pulitzer Prize this year for his opera. But Ralph Vaughan Williams used English folk songs. Liszt used Hungarian rhapsodies. Chopin used mazurkas and polonaises. Aaron Copland used American folk songs. Schubert used Viennese quotes in Shepherd on the Rock. Hello, all composers do this. They pull from their folk experience, their popular experience, and whatever they love, they infuse their music with that. And if we don't turn our backs on Ralph Vaughan Williams, on Liszt, or we don't Chopin or Copland or Schubert, we shouldn't make that something to overcome with African American composers. So that's number one. And then the next thing is to experience the music, enjoy the music, play the music. It's not hard to put it into the curriculum if you appreciate it. So how do you do that? I want to pause for a second to say that the ideas that I'm thinking about that you might implement are not hard. But you you add to them some things that take mandates from the Conservatory. They need to require certain things, or they could add credit for certain things, which gives all students the feeling like it's important. There's that thing of if it's in an important place, it must be important. So I'm going to talk about those things that might make the student body feel at large, not just African American students, at large, that it might be worth looking into, right? So the first thing I think should be done is that you have a Black mini masterclass series. Now, I've done this at many colleges, recently Cal State in Sacramento, where you have, in this case, we can a series of Black alums or other artists to do classical music, master classes, and maybe even one in jazz. But you have students from the Conservatory who perform those things. They learn those things before the master class, and then they're taught. And then what you do is you then have a few days later a performance in which they perform those things, and the person who is the person who held the master class also performs. Like they perform first, then the second half is only students. This has been a great success, and this is something that can be done with Hispanic music, with Asian music. It can be done certainly with an unbelievable amount of African American classical music that exists. Now, can you give this is on Zoom, right? COVID has done us a favor. It has perfected the use of these kinds of things on Zoom. When Larry Brownlee started, he's the famous Black tenor.
Oh, yeah. Tenor, yeah.
Well, when he started his coffee and a song, right, in his little room, and of course he bought all this equipment, and he had Myra Huang, this great pianist, great accompanist. She was in Europe, and she played, and he had a big screen up there. That was his start. But then LA Opera picked it up. Then Chicago picked it up. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. Yesterday there was the big Jesse Norman tribute. So they have perfected this for us. And we can use it. Because if the Conservatory has any problems with fundraising, they need not fundraise much for this. They don't have to bring the artist to Boston. They don't have to house the artist. And most artists of that ilk that we're talking about, whether it's Denise Graves or Larry Brownlee or Michael Morgan, the great black conductor, they have means. And so you're offering them an honorarium. And they want to share this music because it is upsetting to have a cadre of beautiful stuff that you can't share, So we're talking about something not difficult. It's been piloted, can be started in a week if you wanted to, How? Well, because I'm going to send you a list of databases. The work has been done. There are databases for Black classical orchestral music. There are databases for Black classical art song. There are databases for Black classical concert spirituals. And there are lists of these works, and these works are on YouTube. There is no reason not to have teachers who don't know the music at all pick a few things and listen to them and assign them to the students. But certainly when I do these master classes and when others do them, they send a list of music. And I send the music, actually, to the teachers. And I say, try this. And they give it out, right? I don't have to impose it on them. They give it out to the student that they think is best. Or they let the student pick, so that the students learn 2 or 3 things. Maybe if they're vocal students, they learn an aria. They learn a concert spiritual. They learn an art song. And then the person comes on and helps them. And when that happens and you see them light up with this music, there's nothing to sell. Nothing to sell to the teachers, nothing to sell to the students. And this is important to know, that the repositories are already there, to know that the music will stand on its own. There is, Jose Nunez Garcia. There are great choral masters of music. I'm thinking of a guy, McCormick, who conducts at Lincoln Center every year. And certainly he could come online and help conduct your early music department with the Mass of Jose Nunez Garcia, or one of the beautiful operatic pieces of Le Chevalier de Saint Georges, who is of the time of Haydn. Haydn knew him. Mozart knew him. They all respected him. For instrumental music, I know that Michael Morgan, a great Black conductor, who will be conducting the San Francisco Symphony, if we have a San Francisco Symphony, hope, who will be conducting that symphony in addition to his own, the Oakland East Bay Symphony. So you have these people who can conduct master classes with ensemble or with an orchestra and with individuals, so that you can, in every department, infuse it with beautiful new music. This isn't hard. Okay. Mm-hmm. Should I go on with some other ideas? Do you have a question that maybe I should stop for, or I have a list of them?
Well, I do want to ask you one question, and would love to continue along this way. You talked about how, as you were a student, you taught and you worked throughout the community. I was just really curious to ask you, just what impact did that experience have on you and even the other Black colleagues? Perhaps maybe the impact that you had in several of the communities that you were in, or the people that you came across.
Yeah, in fact, that's going to constitute something that relates to a suggestion that I have for helping the students at NEC, but I can definitely go there and tell you what we did. So for opera students, I can't really speak. I know community services sent people out, and I can't speak to what that effect was. But we had to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Opera singers singing at 8 o'clock in the morning is a very bad thing. But we had we had a series called Introduction to Opera, and we had a series of I can't think of the name of it that we gave Don Pasquale, but it was in English, and it was like Lady and the Bachelor or something. But anyway, we had series of things that we performed for schools all in the Boston area, in underserved areas and in not so underserved areas. And the kids, we would, especially in Intro to Opera, we would hold notes and have note holding contests, and then we would have them up on the stage helping us, and then we would do our little scenes. And what happened? Well, of course, the same thing will happen when we perform the music for a non-Black audience, which is most of the audiences that I performed for. They just like what they're seeing. They're having fun. And they like the idea of those voices that can do those things that they could have trouble doing, and holding notes and breathing and doing all. So we help to foster an appreciation for the art and for the study. And then we sang, and then we added people up on the stage to help us in the scenes. And of course, the kids loved it. In Black communities, Italian communities, multi-ethnic communities, because as you know, Boston is a place, at least it was when I was there, of many enclaves of various ethnic communities. And so that's what happened. That's what I'm saying will happen when the students do a master class and actually get involved in the music. Now, a couple of other things I'd like to suggest about their getting involved with the music. One is a mandate that I think the Conservatory might do. And people hate the word mandate, so I got to come up with a better word. But right now, it's the only one I can think of. They need to say, like Manhattan School of Music did, that on all of their Jordan Hall and concert series in or on Zoom, and major concert series, they're going to have at least one piece of Black music, classical music. They're on every one. And that's the mandate that, for example, is being followed now for the Manhattan School. It's not hard. There's so much variety. It's really not hard. Then they need to also perhaps see about some credit for master classes. Maybe not, maybe half credit, maybe you have to take 2 in a semester, and you get a credit. I don't know the process for those things, but those things instill value in those who don't have a value for it, but will gain a value if they participate. So they also need to say that each student is required once in the semester to perform a work, a Black classical work. And these things help us to get guidelines. If you don't have the guideline, you're likely not to do it. But if you're likely to do it and you get to pick yourself, you get to pick it yourself, you will find something that is wonderful, because there's so much wonderful music there. So I want to mention that, because in student recitals, there should be at least one. In all major recitals sponsored by the university, orchestral, ensemble, choral, I'm saying, because the music is there, and it can be done. And the databases are there so that the people themselves can pick. And that's essential. So going with what you're talking about impact with community and the students there, I want to suggest some things that the students can do, not only to earn money, but to come up creatively to connect with underserved communities and to gain approbation. What's the good word? That's not a good word. Praise and money for doing these, for doing something special. And so I have the idea of, number one, targeting merit awards to boost financial aid, or raising funds that are targeted for merit awards. What kind of merit awards? Innovative Programming Award to a student or ensemble. Outstanding Black Music Performance Award at the end of the year. Most Innovative Community Online Program at the end of the year. And, I benefited. I know that the Conservatory still gives merit awards. And I was really lucky, obviously, right? Obviously. But on that model, I thought, well, why not? Why not have awards that are given by an individual in the community targeted to this? And the reason is that I won the Lade Foundation Award for voice. And that took my expenses, that covered my expenses for a year, all of them. Okay. Now, if I can sit up and say, oh, I got that. No. The idea is that is something that can be done. I must keep saying university because I taught at Berkeley, UC Berkeley. At any rate, the Conservatory can get targeted funds for these special awards and name them for the person who gives the award. That award given at the end of the year, the university and the student council, I don't know what you call it, you don't call it student council, student union, can get together and work out how it will be awarded, that is, how it will be judged, and all students can participate. Not just minority students, but minority students will definitely, if you're giving an award for outstanding Black music performance in the community, likely they're going to have an upper hand there, But the idea is that in doing this, one gets real involvement where the students can offset some of their expenses, which that's very important. We know that the Conservatory has to raise money for its regular expenses. But I tell you, just recently, what was it that I just heard about? It was yesterday on the news, how they were talking about how when you target something like that, especially in these times, COVID times, times of Black Lives Matter, times of such upheaval, people want to do something. And they want to do something that helps in those areas. So we're not taking money away from another area of the Conservatory. That's what the fundraisers must understand. That this, as in my time, was a time when people want to come forward and do something that they hope will help the minority student. And so all you're doing is saying, okay, do this. We will give more merit awards. And these can help students in the university, the Conservatory, can decide how. Is it going to go towards tuition? Is it going to just help the student with their living expenses? They don't have to go out and wait table. It's up to them as to how they structure this. So you don't just impose something. What is so easy to do right now in this climate, one has to understand that it's not going to take money away from anybody else. The other thing is that students, with graduate students and the student union, can facilitate performing and designing and giving online workshops for underserved communities. That means connecting with students, connecting with faculty, connecting in certain ways, of course, online right now, hopefully not forever, where they design the program, and perform the program. And I'm going to tell you about an experience that I had that I model this on. I worked to design programs to help design a program on great African American heroines with the Humanities Department in California, the California Humanities. I helped them form a troupe that went all over the West, California, Nevada, Arizona, and performed in libraries and schools and all these places. And what they did was the Humanities gave a matching grant to whatever place wanted to have the student. Or they weren't students; these were professionals. But the idea that okay, it would normally cost $700 or $800 to do this, so most schools can't do it. But if it's matched, then you're talking about $300 or $400. And so a lot of libraries jumped on it because that's in their budget, $300 or $400. And that means that all this performance could go out and could enrich the student or the professional in this case. And that is what students need. They need to make money. They don't need to wait till they graduate because they need money to get them through the conservatory. And so I model this idea of online workshops and right now, and later student created 40-minute performances, Zoom performances at first, which don't cost anything, but to which people can donate to a fund that will help the student performer. And this works. Yesterday, I don't know if you saw it, maybe many of you did, the 75-year Jesse Norman tribute was an hour and a half of Black artists, dancers, poets, Anna DeVere Smith, great young, I know many of the people, Black opera singers, performing music as a tribute to Jesse Norman, who would have been 75. And of course, great conductors were there giving testimonials about her, and it was lovely. And it's on film. So why I say this is because they didn't charge anything for it. Enormous production would have cost a fortune, even though most people volunteered to do it. But just think about it for a minute. At the end, they said, if you want to give some money, just go up to Eventbrite and donate. Well, that didn't work. And so you would think they didn't get any money because Eventbrite shut down. But it did work because people kept writing, well, we love this thing. Where do we give the money? Where do we give the money? I went and found a link and put it up on Facebook, and other people did too. And the minimum donation they suggest was $35. People gave it. Why? Because it was great entertainment. And nobody wants to be just a taker, So you think about that model, and you realize that people, if you do something like that, people will give. And that can help the students. If there's a fund for the student participants, then that can be divided amongst the students. It's not the same model, but a similar model that can work, and the student union and graduate students can work it out. And that's another one. I think that I had one more thing. Merit. Well, I just want to say, because I can't think what that other one is, it might come to me, but later, that please just know that it's wrong in our times to take that music and stick it in some department. This is music that we can pick up right away, that's accessible. You like avant-garde music? There's avant-garde. The Pulitzer Prize winner this year was a Black composer, opera composer. Do one of his operas. If you don't do the Central Park Five, you can do X the Opera, which is a great opera. I'll send you some arias from it. It's wonderful. And, so the early music department, go get the Mass of Chevalier de Saint-Georges. The Mass of Jose Nunez Garcia. It doesn't take time. It's there, it's recorded, there are many models, and I just want to say, please don't ghettoize the music. It need not be. And there's so many fun vehicles like this that can give the students at the conservatory funds to help them through the conservatory. Not everybody was as lucky as I, but they're as talented, more talented, and they need to have the opportunity to make money. So go, yes, when COVID is over, you can think of a dozen programs you can take out to the community and fund to build where you can pay a little bit and have the community match the other part and give that to the students who participate, and it will help them. They don't have to work in the cafeteria.
Right.
There are
So,
many, many, many opportunities.
right. So you talked briefly about the identities of composers, Liszt and Chopin and Copland, and how, again, they were connecting um, their own kind of folk music and background and what they were writing.
Hmm.
I'm really curious, you as an artist, over all of these years, I mean, how have you brought your identity forward in your own singing, or not sure if you've written anything, um, but
Yes.
how do you see that, and how could we do more
Oh,
of
yeah.
bringing the
Let me.
identities of musicians out?
Since I did go into television for a while before I went back into my full time concert career, with concerts and orchestras on series, I created vehicles, unique vehicles. For myself, I got a reputation for doing that. First, I started with a number of different types, like the songs of bel canto composers. Now, these were not black composers; these were just bel canto composers. Did you know that Donizetti wrote songs as seen in German? Well, I do, and I sang a whole concert full of that stuff. Then I did concerts of classical Spanish music, and we called it the ones with orchestra. But the thing is, I traveled all over with different orchestras, and they made way for this music. And it does exist. Sometimes we had to bring the music from Spain, but it does exist. But all kinds of Cuban and South American and all kinds of music. Then I decided that I was going to meet all of the major, at my time, composers, classical composers that I could. And I funded it myself. And I went and I worked with each of them. And they all gave me music and they all sent me music. And I created the Unsung Muse series. That series became so popular on concert series all across the country and an orchestral series that I made a film since I had that background. And I made a film called An Unsung Muse, not The Unsung Muse, but An Unsung Muse, with all kinds of wonderful singers of the time, I included myself too. And that exists on DVD to this day. So we interviewed composers of the time. Ollie Wilson, for example, he's passed away, an avant-garde composer. Well, a number of different composers, a number of different wonderful classical singers from the Met and other places, and that exists. What could you do with that? Well, you could have a little film series in which that's too what I forgot. A film series in which you play an unsung music. It tells 200 years of the history of Black classical song. That's why I won the award for research in Black classical music. It was that film and that tour, that series of tours. So you play the film, which is made 40 minutes, so it can fit into an hour. You have a Q&A afterwards, and then you do a master class with some of those artists. So there are things you can do. The Jesse Norman piece that I told you about, Kenny Overton's piece, it exists now on DVD, and it's a little long, but you have to present it. You could present it in a very enjoyable, wonderful, and impressive way, because you have Michael Tilson Thomas talking. You have all these people whom we admire talking about her, and Anna Devere Smith performing. These are great artists. And so you have also young artists performing. And you could simply require that students look at this thing. What an education it is. And it's a painless education, both Unsung Muse, where you have 200 years of Black classical song, or in this case, the Jesse Norman tribute, which chronicles her life, career, family, and all the great conductors and people she worked with. These are ways, a little film series. And so that's what I did. I got a reputation for I created a series that goes on today on African American heroines. And I performed acting. I researched it. I taught people how to research their ancestors and their heroines. And I performed Mary Ellen Pleasant, the mother of civil rights in California. I researched her life. I ended up on 25 years researching her life, but after about 4 years, I did the performance. I did a question and answer session as Pleasant on the spot, and then we did question and answer session with me sharing my research, and this was in costume, and I did a musical based on that, which exists again on film. So when you add film as an avocation, in my case it was a vocation for a while, then you find that you can take that film, you can capture things that you care about, and it lives forever. So yes, that's what I was known for, and I'm still known for, doing these unusual concerts of African American art and history, song and history, and performing them, and going and teaching other people how to do it, and having enduring pieces. The 15 awards that I won, international awards, were for a piece called the Voices for Freedom, and was about the first, the Hires sisters, the first two African American women who toured the country in opera. And when they decided not to follow their careers to Europe, it was because they had brought they had taken the protection of African Americans out of the South. And they were raised in the African American community in California. And so when they did that, they told their dad, no, I'm not going. We're not going to finish a European career. We are going to create what we call music dramas about the African American experience. And we're going to take these music dramas all across the land again to our white audiences, so that this will offset the imaging that's going on of our people. They were raised in the African American community in San Francisco. What happened? These became the first American musicals. All the people you know about today, Ciceretta Jones and the Black Putty and Black Patty's Minstrels, they modeled themselves after the Hires, quote unquote, music dramas. And I took 6 years to research that piece and use opera singers and singers of all kinds as they did, and a rapper. And the rapper brought their experience up to today. That, of course, is on PBS, and that is on DVD. And so now you're talking about five films that you could have a little film series on Black classical music and history. And that's my contribution.
Right. So in my final question for the evening, I'm just really curious. I mean, what is your hope for the future, in terms of not only NEC, but our field, for opera?
Well, to have some like they do, to have some chance to, like they do in Russia now. Russia's doing full performances. Of course, they canceled the Bolshoi last week, so that might have ended. But they were doing Don Carlo in full costume with chorus and everything on stage with orchestra. And Italy was doing their Don Carlo with not scenery, no costumes, but they were doing it. And instead of 20,000 people in Pizarro, they had 3, but they were doing it. So the first thing I want to say is, hello, let's see if we can get rid of this COVID. Let's everybody cooperate so that we can perform again. Look, you've got the greatest singers in the world teaching right now. They're teaching in their homes on Zoom. Christine Goerke, the famous Electra, and Metropolitan Opera, Brunhilde, is coaching in her home. And Larry Brownlee has hit upon something, and now all these opera companies are putting him on Zoom with other people and creating these extravaganzas. But how about one dream, having some more full operas in the United States? That is a great dream. And then after that, of course, uh, as I said, not ghettoizing this beautiful music, whether it is, what I told you about in terms of master classes could also apply to Asian music, to Indian music, to certainly to Hispanic music. You don't know the music of Ginastera, of Montsalvat, of all these wonderful sounds and colors in this classical music of Hispanic, that's what we called it, that utilizes Hispanic culture, whether it's from Spain or whether it's from South America or Cuba. It all is there, and it's available to orchestras. And so my dream, if it hasn't happened yet, but it's beginning to happen with the mandate that they put out, at Manhattan. If you play the music, if you sing the music, since the databases are there, since Zoom is there, the vehicle is there, you don't ghettoize the music. You'll see that it belongs on the smorgasbord of all music. That has always been my dream. And it still is my dream, and I think it's attainable now with the vehicles that we have that take away the large cost, travel, all those things, where people can dabble in it and see what it is. So that is a dream.
Well, I will say, I mean, sorry, excuse me.
No, I just think that the film series was the thing that I had forgotten. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's a fun way to learn. Also, they could give credit for one a year doing a Black music history class, but you can do it as a film. That's what I did. I created something. It took me, started in 1985 and did the debut in 88. It took me 3 years to do that film, touring, and finally to do that film. And, it's there, 200 years. Narrated, pictures, music, and there's so many of these. So it's a great graduate student project to put it together as a film series and to have people see it and learn that way. It's inspiring. The singers are great.
Well, I will say that this is great. I enjoyed our conversation this evening. I've enjoyed a couple of conversations that we have had. Very appreciative of all of your contributions to music and especially to NEC. I'm quite excited about what NEC can accomplish. I'm also very excited about hearing more of my Black colleagues and those that came before us to have their voices heard on more stages in the future. And I really think it's something that can help revitalize our art form, what we love. I think it's a great way of how we can bring more energy to our institutions, especially NEC.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So I
was just going to add one thing. We mustn't forget the board. We must bring people of all of other ethnicities onto boards and into the boardrooms and into the administration, so that they bring a different view and different ideas. And once that is done, and they're beginning to do it, Carnegie Mellon just brought Tamara Tooney on the board. You know who she is. You don't know that you know who she is, but she's the doctor in SVU. In special victims, SVU.
Okay.
We all know her. She comes and she gives her pronouncement of a dead person. But at any rate, we all know her for years, 22 years on television. So what I'm saying is Carnegie Mellon just brought her in. And when you do that, you bring just a different perspective. You also bring a person in who's used to dealing with all kinds of people. So nobody's going to feel uncomfortable with that person. Whether you bring Simon Estes in, who, or you bring Denise Graves in, these people have dealt with all kinds of people all over the world. So they're not going to make your board members uncomfortable, but they will enrich with new ideas. And that's what's needed. Ideas in administration and opera, ideas in the universities, ideas in conservatories, through decision-making bodies, not whole bodies of African Americans, just a few that add to the flavor, add to the mix.
Well, I will say, it's going to be a good amount of work, but I think it's also going to be a really great journey. So thanks again for being with us. I look forward to continuing the conversation. Look forward to seeing you on campus a little bit more this academic year. And again,
I don't know, but we hope so. I mean, I used to come to Boston every 2 years. I attend the alumni. They have alumni for WGBH, would you believe? Alumni board things, I would always visit my friends, and I would walk from the conservatory. This is stupid, but I do it. I walk all the way from the conservatory all the way over to Brookline, and that's a long walk. Yeah, it's quite a long walk. I just want to see everything because I spent 14 years there, and I used to always go to Nantucket too. So I'd love to come back when it's safe. And I hope that is certainly a good thing to look forward to. See my friends and make new friends.
Great. All right. Well, and for those that are joining us again, thank you for spending some time with us this evening. Looking forward to wrapping up this series on the Black experience at NEC on September 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with a panel of recent alumni. Thanks again for joining us, and hope that you all have a very, very safe and healthy time throughout this pandemic. Bye-bye.
There are no questions.
Oh, not well, the ones that I gave you were the ones that came through.
That's wonderful.